Good evening. I'm Joshua Free, and welcome to another edition of Mardukite Theatre. Jenny was quite apprehensive about partaking in a prayer meeting among her new family. She had never been quite the religious type. Sure, she had attended church with her parents when she was younger and had read the Holy Bible, but there seemed to be something missing, something deeper that she felt alone and living in the knowledge of. For years since she had become a pubescent girl, her Gnostic beliefs had set her apart from family and friends. They were all fundamentalists to her, who regarded nothing more than what they had been fed by a prior generation, a generation that had also never seemed to question why. The two girls and Hanson returned to the main hall below to find nearly 20 figures gathered. Most of them wore the now familiar black robes. A few wore blue, and one in the corner busied with a computer was wearing red. All heads turned toward them as they came down the stairs and through the threshold. Some murmured words were quickly silenced, leaving Jenny to think that the hot topic of the evening was of course about her. She also realized that it was well after midnight. Didn't these people ever sleep? Jenny scanned the crowd, then turned to Holly wide-eyed. "Which one is Owl?" None," answered Holly. None. He's been gone for the better part of 2 days. He does that sometimes. Just goes off by himself. Usually lets someone know he's leaving." She motioned to the red-cloaked figure working in the corner at the console. "At any rate, when he wants to, he'll come back." Many of the members present had already begun gathering at the far end of the corridor near the strange pyramid and crystal arrangement. As the girls moved to join the remainder of the group, Jenny noticed something else. "Is Hanson the only non-reptilian living here?" Holly nodded. "Yeah, he's mostly tolerated because of me. I think some of them are always going to be a bit apprehensive about him, but he's proven himself enough around here." She laughed. "I think." Members of the group found what Jenny assumed were their usual positions around the circle and seated themselves comfortably. Being led by the hand, Holly took Jenny with her to the far corner of the circle so that they were seated together. Hanson sat at the other side of Holly. He began busying himself with using his hands and fingers to stretch and press the muscles of his back, leaning this way and that. The remainder of those present seemed to find contentment in casual conversation. Jenny found herself getting tired, mostly because of the recent events transpiring in her life, and not so much being that it was now somewhere around 3 o'clock in the morning. She wasn't even really sure where she was going to be sleeping. Her thoughts were interrupted when a cloaked male figure spoke out. "Why are we even doing this?" he asked. "Shouldn't the Owl be doing this? He's the only one that's ever made it work, and yet we do this night after night even when he isn't here." "Carl, we do it," spoke another cloaked male voice, one of the three wearing blue who was reviewing passages from a book near the metal pyramid when the first had spoken. "Because it is our way. It brings us together, each night, in spite of whatever we might be involved with otherwise. To be together." He gestured to Jenny. "It not only sets an example, but also brings us together with our newcomer." His back was turned to them again. "That's James," whispered Holly to her, pointing to the blue-cloaked guardian holding the book. "If you want to know." Being seated on the floor, Jenny had seen the dim, faint outlines of the speaker's face beneath the hood as he turned to her. Looking around, she saw that it was similar with the others, and it seemed to be a little less weird. They weren't hiding from each other, they simply were not attracting attention or distraction of the situation. She supposed that Holly was right, and that they just needed more time to get used to it. She could relate. The three members wearing blue did not sit in the outer ring with the remainder of the group. At first, Jenny had thought that the choice of the outfit color had been a personal preference, but she now realized that it might be a distinction of some rank or class that had not yet been explained to her. She leaned forward and strained her neck to see, and sure enough, the red-robed figure was still in the other half of the hall, busied on the computer. From her perspective, she could see his seated figure from the side, and if by instinct, he stopped typing for a moment and looked over to her direction and waved. Feeling foolish, Jenny quickly leaned back and focused instead on the pyramid and the beautiful blue crystals. "Well, he could sense you watching him," said Holly. "Our ailment gives us kind of a bit of an edge." Jenny nodded with a half-smile. "Okay," said James' voice again. He turned to Jenny, is it? I know you are new to this, obviously, so what we really need to do with the others right now is just hum. Don't worry about anything else right now." Then he stopped and looked over the other side of the hall. "Hey, Chris, when might we hope to see you over here?" "You may hope whenever you like," came the voice from across the hall, making a small audible chuckle. A few of those gathered did the same. "I'll be right there." Each of the three-robed figures was standing near one of the four pillars surrounding the pyramid. Moments later, the one in red, identified as Chris, went to stand by the fourth pillar. "Chris doesn't always join us for prayers," said Holly in a quiet tone. "He usually does, but with the owl gone, he doesn't really have much of a choice. They need a fourth." The participants were all seated quietly now around the metallic pyramid. Three cloak members wearing blue and one wearing red stood fast, each by one of the pillars that held a blue crystal similar to the larger one hanging from the apex, which seemed to maintain a soft glow. The lights in the hall had been dimmed, nearly put out altogether, replaced by dozens of candles set all around. A wooden box had been removed from an adjoining room, the two clay cuneiform tablets within it now set in the center of the pyramid. "There's a specific tone required," said one of the other blue-robed guardians. It was unusual not seeing a person's face when they spoke, but she was certain this was being directed towards her. "The others will start it. You will be able to join in easy enough. Don't worry about anything other than just this is a natural harmonic flow of the universe being tapped in with sound." Almost instantly, someone among the outer ring began to make a humming sound. It was a deep and flat, completely fixed in a singularity. Others then began to imitate the same sound, and the eerie buzz grew more intense. Then they all joined hands. It was entirely unique to Jenny, and not nearly as silly as she originally was thinking. She began her own voice, and it was not at first the same pitch as the surrounding echoes, but it took less than a few seconds for it to seem to correct itself, by itself. She was at once immediately now in harmony with those in the circle. When one person was forced to pause to take a breath, the remainder held the tone, and soon they would be back in full stride, allowing one another a random break. And yet, in listening to the combined sonic vibration, it was as if it completely unbroken and perfect. At precisely 3:13 a.m., while the outer circle produced their sound, James began his incantation from within the ring. "By the magic word known only to Ea Enki and to his son Marduk, I let loose the incantation of the deep of Eridu. I am a priest of Marduk." Another blue-robed incanter added, "I am the messenger of Marduk." "I am the secret priest of Eridu," affirmed Chris. "I am the guardian of Babylon," spoke the last member, standing in blue robes. The buzzing rose even higher as James continued, "Enki, father of Marduk, we are your children, godfather of our race, grandfather of magic, add your pure spell to ours, your pure voice to ours. The breath of Anu is within me, the water of Enki is within me, the blood of Marduk is within me. It is not I, but Nabu that speaks the incantation now." With the harmonic sounds resonating at their heights and the time reaching 3:15 in the morning, a new chant broke out from within the ring, initiated by James and echoed back by the other three. The incantation in obscure language merged with the humming sound to create an otherworldly sensation in Jenny's head. She closed her eyes, vocalized her tone, and listened to the words repeated over and over again. "Zidinga anakampa, zidinga kiakampa, petu babu timu zi ilukampa, anaku aradka ilu zi anakampa, anunnaki tiiru una anzazu." The chanted words abruptly stopped, then the buzzing sound continued. Then Holly whispered over quietly, "Jenny, look." Jenny slowly opened her eyes, allowing her vision to come into the focus, and stared out in front of her. At first she wasn't quite sure what she was seeing, or if she was really seeing was really even real. Before her she saw the barred structure of the pyramid illuminated in a bluish hue, as if the target of a spotlight. A beam of etheric bluish-white light streamed from each of the 4 crystals on the plaster pillars to each other, and also to the central apex stone, the paths of energy crossing one another to form practically another pyramid of light. The outer circle fell silent and looked on. Something had happened. Something was happening. Although no one was making any noise, the previous humming sound seemed to be holding faintly in the air, or perhaps the light apparition itself had become the source of its own tone. Jenny couldn't be sure. But the almost silence in the room was disrupted when a high-pitched screeching sound erupted from the pyramid, like someone scraping sharp metal against a smooth metallic surface. But there seemed to be no possible source for this sound, aside from the crystal. The audible scratching turned to a crackling, like the crumpling of a rough plastic snack bag. Static noise filled the air, increasing in volume but never varying in frequency. Jenny glanced over to gauge Holly's reaction, but the other's attention was fixed on the pyramid. Then, as if someone had tuned a dial to an antiquated AM radio broadcast, a voice could be heard, separate but intertwined with the popping static. It was male, scratchy and old-sounding at first, not even speaking a language she could understand. Instead, it sounded like a distant response to the utterances made during the prayer, broken by noise. Z, Anki, Babi, Drang. And it was completely unintelligible. Petu, Babu, Timu, chanted James. The other guardians repeated the chant, and finally it was carried up by the members occupying the circle, when a blinding light suddenly emanated from the pyramid's crystal, accompanied by a piercing ring that threatened to deafen those present. All fell silent. The light and wail died down too, then quite clearly the unseen voice returned. Babili guardians, your prayers have been carried to me by the spirit of the bond of heaven and earth. You have done well to observe my tradition, but why do you call? Where is my Nabu, your owl? There are preparations to be laid. For when? The time is near. The Anunnaki are to return and be established. Thank you for joining us for this special presentation of Episode 1, Hybrids, Alien Awakening. With grants from our sponsors, we hope to continue this series into 2 further seasons with Alien Invasion and Alien Revolution. From all of us here at Mardukite Ministries, we wish you peace, love, and unity. Participants, we're all seated quietly now around the metallic pyramid. 3 cloak members wearing blue and 1 wearing red stood fast, each by one of the pillars that held a large blue crystal, similar to the large one hanging from the apex, which seemed to maintain a soft glow. Alright, I don't like that. Participants were all seated quietly now around the metallic pyramid. 3 cloak members wearing blue and 1 wearing red stood fast, each by one of the pyramid. Fucking A.